we're in a different place. Look at this. This is of all the videos we've done, hardly any of them have been in the studio.
And we are in the studio. This is my studio. And we're here. So before I fix the guitar thing, you were saying something.
Yes. There's a song that I rehearsed with a band this weekend that reminded me of you this morning. Because the lyrics go, after all these years, it surprises me how much I still like talking to you, do-do-do-do-do-do-do. And we've been doing this for almost 3 years now, and we've been friends for 14 years.
Yeah, I believe
14 years?
Something like that.
And I still like talking to you.
It's nice that you still like talking to me. I love talking to you. It's always fun.
Some of our best conversations are here on the podcast.
Yeah.
Or to and from gigs.
Or it's pretty much always just like this. Yeah, well, I guess that's a good way to start. Let's just
let's dive in.
Get this going. Yeah, you'll notice I'm wearing a scarf, and that is because the weather is, even for Colorado, super cold. We've had negative temperatures at night. Not that much snow. I bet, though, over the weekend, we got maybe 6 inches.
Yeah, it was
5.
Something. It was something.
Yeah. Not that bad. But the negative temperatures were, it's been a little...
Yeah, and a couple of those negative temperature days and nights were with high winds. So They were reporting wind chills of 25 below zero.
Yeah,
which is real cold for Colorado.
It's pretty cold. But we got through it fine. House is warm. I did a bunch of house prep stuff that I don't think we really needed, but I was a little worried about, pipes freezing and so on and so forth. And but we're just fine. Turned out the crawl space might be the warmest part of our house. It is. It's hot down there.
It's where the furnace runs.
Yeah, it is where the furnace is. So
and that's where the pipes are too. So
it totally makes sense. But anyway, we were totally fine, and we didn't really stay in.
No, we didn't. You'd think that we would just cozy up and not go anywhere.
Right.
And instead, we had a staff meeting on Saturday morning when it was negative 5 degrees outside.
Yeah.
I mean, I've just been dressing for it. My new favorite thing. So I went to Sierra Trading Post, my new favorite store, and I stocked up on their after Christmas clearance sales. So I got a new pair of wool ski socks. They're knee high, and oh my gosh, my feet are so much warmer. I'm wearing them every day.
It really
makes a difference.
Just dressing for it, really. Yeah. I mean, the South is getting some cold. I was just texting my mom. The South is getting some cold and possible snow. I guess actually they've had some snow in Texas and Louisiana, and they are losing their minds. Airports are closed, businesses are closed, schools are closed. And I was just we flew in and out of Denver in way worse conditions.
Yeah. For
Christmas and the Mexico trip. And I guess people out here just plan for it and know how to deal with it,
And at this point, yeah, you just dress for it. I've been wearing lots of layers. I went out for a walk yesterday when it was, I shoveled the snow and then I went for a walk and it was, I think it was -2.
Yeah.
Or something like that. And I dressed so warmly that I was sweating. It didn't take long either. So it's all about good gear, I guess,
It really is. And you also just get a little I don't want to say tougher, but you just out here, it's cold and then the summers are super hot and sometimes it's really windy and sometimes and you just sort of get to where yeah, you're just going to do stuff.
Yeah.
You just kind of I'm a little uncomfortable. Yeah. Anyway, though, let's talk about our freezing cold weekend and let's start it with a wonderful show that we went to with our good friend and your teacher, Morgan Lowe.
Yeah, right.
Friday night, we went to the Roxy on Broadway, which we've had a showcase there. And I played there with Lee Clark Allen. So we've done a few things there over the years.
I did a 45+1 with DJ Alf there a long time ago.
You sure did, yeah. So that venue has now been there for quite a while. It's closed and changed hands, but it's still the Roxy.
Yeah.
I would say for a quiet sit down and listen show, that is one of the better rooms
It really is.
in town.
It's nice. Nice cocktails, nice,
Yeah.
comfortable place, good layout, good sound.
Yeah. And now they're doing a no cover thing, which, they're making up for other places, but
There were a lot of lines on the check.
there are a lot of lines on the check. But at the same time, for musicians, I think that's great. So anyway, we went to see Morgan's show, and it turned out the other front person was the lead guitar player from Stone Beat Invasion. And we were sitting there for like 30 minutes going, I absolutely know that we know that guy.
Yeah.
Who... And then it was like, oh yeah, that's...
Yeah.
And you know how crazy I am. It was something he played, and I was like, "Oh, that's the guitar player."
Oh, that's how you recognize
Yeah.
him? He played a lick that you're like, oh, that's...
I've heard that.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, I mean, I also just knew from like visually. I was like, I know him, and I know I've talked to him. I really enjoyed the band. It was, Morgan is always great, and she, like any musician, was apparently not thrilled with her performance, but I can tell you from where we were sitting, she sounded dynamite.
Yeah, sounded great.
Every time I hear her. And she is getting some professional polish on her performance and her poise, and it was just really great to see. But they were doing, some classic kind of Americana, a little bit of country. They did Act Naturally, which is one of my all-time favorite songs, Buck Owens. And the Beatles did it too.
And it was nice that it was not covers you hear every other band do.
Yeah, right. And there were some originals in there, and they did some really good ones. A couple of Morgan's originals that I really like, and it was great. So we enjoyed that show, and then we woke up the next morning and went to the twice a year staff meeting.
Yes, it's a biannual staff meeting for Performance High.
Right.
Where I tell everybody how things are going and what we've been working on and where we are going, and just big old update. I mean, I keep everybody updated with a weekly update every Tuesday, which I need to do right now. But that's just like kind of daily operation stuff.
This is more big picture, and it is amazing. I've said this on the podcast, but it's really great how forthcoming you are with all the behind the scenes stuff and the details and the I know that as technically one of your employees, it's just really appreciated, and I think everybody feels that way, that you are not keeping people in the dark. And it was a great meeting, and it was good too because you built in some time to let people talk and express where they're coming from and where they want to go and where they would like to see the whole company go. Yeah, it was a very...
And it was good, warm vibes. So we've lost a few employees lately. All of them were people who were barely working for Performance High anyway, for one reason or another.
Right.
Health or schedule, or just a mismatch between their skills and what the clients we can bring them.
Sure.
So we've kind of slimmed down the roster a little bit, and we are left with a core group that I absolutely love. I mean, I love the people who left too, but
I mean, it's still 10 people. It's not like it's a tiny group, but yes, it is it's the core group. I mean, it was it was great to not have Nate there. That was a real relief. And I think, that came up in the meeting, of course. Sorry, Nate. No, it was just a great vibe. We missed Nate very much, and but it was a great vibe, and it really, I left feeling very like go team.
That's great. I'm glad.
And I would bet if I did, then everybody did.
Yeah, Connor watched it right away. I sent the recording out. Connor watched less than 24 hours later, and he had a similar comment that he's like, it's motivating for the year ahead. And I was like, that's great. Because Connor's the newest addition. He's the least tied into everything.
He has a lot of his own things. He's on tour with Andy Sadow.
Sadow.
They are on tour for a few weeks. And so that's why he was watching remotely.
Yeah.
And,
And I don't do anything to make it rah-rah. Like, I am,
You do not.
I am literally, here's the facts, here's what changed in a good way, here's what changed in a bad way, here's the things to worry about, here's the things, I'm just like, literally like, here's the information. Period. You know?
With the addition, and I think it's worth saying, you you do all of that, but then you also present a vision of here's where we'd like to go, or here's where we could go, or here's the possibilities. Things that are coming up in the future are things like getting Performance High its own building, and which is going to be a lot and you kind of like it's not just the cut and dried of here we are and this and that. It's like you always have a bit of a vision, and I think that's what's so motivating, and inspiring, and like we can do it, and like
I just know that when I'm following a leader, I feel less motivated by a rah-rah leader who I think might be sugarcoating things than by someone who has an optimistic outlook but is realist and tells the truth.
Yeah.
Like, I want to know where I stand. I want to know where everything really stands. And so that's the way I do it.
I hopefully do the same thing in leadership roles that I've had. And I think people do respond to it. That kind of cheerleader, everything's great, everything's amazing, don't worry about it, we're the best, it sort of makes you go, but are we? Like,
yeah, and I mean, optimism is a better way to live your life. Optimists live longer. Optimists get more done.
Sure.
Optimists are healthier.
Yeah.
And I would say that I am more of an optimist than, I guess, a pessimist. I'm an optimist. I mean, anyone who tries to run their own business is by definition an optimist, because it is not the easiest road to hoe. It's for sure not the most reliable thing.
It's the harder thing to do.
It's definitely the harder thing to do, especially when you start out. Fortunately, I didn't know that was what I was doing the first 3 years, and then I found myself in it.
Yeah.
But that said, so I am an optimist, and I want to follow an optimist. I want to be an optimist, but I don't love following people who are blindingly optimist. Like, I will see no risk. I will see no negativity. Like, I want to, in order to deal with risk, you have to see it. In order to deal with a problem, you have to see it.
There's inherent optimism, but it was a great meeting, and I just thought it was something else. And then, gosh, didn't we have a fun dinner that night? We went to a place called Lot One.
Oh, yeah. But before we did that, I had rehearsal.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah, I forgot all about the Pamela rehearsal.
Yeah, that's that song I sang at the beginning.
Yeah.
It's her song, Pamela Makala.
Yeah.
She has had her baby. Well, she had a baby months ago, but she's starting to get back out into the world now after having become a mom.
Yeah, she's over it.
Baby's out with the bathwater.
Yeah.
So she's started to text about gigs and stuff, and we have a gig coming up in February or March, I think.
Not long after you get back from New Zealand, so that's why the rehearsal was kind of early.
Yeah.
You guys sounded great. I was hearing you through the wall. I can't believe I forgot about that because I was,
It's fun to play with an all-female band. Did I talk about the different dynamic of an all-female band?
You have a year ago or something.
Yeah, about a year ago, last time we were hanging
out.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So I won't rehash that. But it was just great to see everyone again. And Mary, the drummer, is now pregnant with her second. So we're in the time of like people dipping out and having babies and coming back.
What a great drummer Mary is. I noticed that through the wall that you guys were. It was like I could hear it just enough to, if I could ignore it really easily, but if I focused on it, I could tell that you guys were grooving. But I could not hear it well enough to know what song was what.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was sort of just the bass and the drums.
Yeah.
It was just a little.
And one thing that makes her a great drummer is that a lot of Pamela's songs are pretty slow tempo. There are a lot of them in the 60s and 70s.
And those are hard.
Yeah, and Mary is still precise. Those songs breathe without dragging.
Yeah.
They're just like, you just sit back and you're like, yeah.
Yeah. And the slowness, it just makes it really hard. I mean, it's hard to groove at that slow. There's just more space in between the beats.
Right.
So keeping it tight is harder because there's just more space, Yeah, and I thought it was great. You know what? am kind of bummed I didn't walk over and say hello to Pamela at least. I mean, I guess I know the rest of them as well, but yeah, it sounds like you guys had a great rehearsal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well-
and then we went to dinner.
And then we went to dinner. Yeah, lot one, extreme northern Arvada. If you, there's apparently like a fun little shopping center, one of those things that's part apartments and then businesses
It's
and
a
bars
mixed-
and restaurants, mixed use
Yeah.
development, kind of like 80th. So if you're up in that area, there's something cool there. So we had a great little dinner there, and it was freezing cold out, so it was a pretty empty. I mean, we did have a reservation, but it was like
I'm sure that place is hopping most Saturday
it
nights.
probably is. Yeah, it was probably. They were probably planning on being packed.
Yeah.
So
That makes it. I think when the weather is terrible, that's the best time to go out and do things.
I mean, in some ways,
because nobody else is out doing them.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it was surprising. To be fair, the roads were not that bad.
Not at all.
I mean, they were not great, but like it was not.
Yeah.
We've seen it way worse. And then
Saturday I had a church gig.
Sunday morning.
Sorry, Sunday morning church.
Yeah,
church
so-
service, not gig service.
Yeah.
And I brought home. I got all the way home, 45 minutes drive home, and I walked to the door, and then I noticed I still had the in-ear monitor pack attached to my belt. And I'm not playing with them next Sunday, but I need to get it back to them by
So you have to
Sunday,
return the in-ear
I
pack.
am going to drive down there on Sunday morning in time for the setup for the service and return it.
Yeah,
And then
that's a
drive home.
costly thing. That's one of the reasons I always put packs and stuff in my back pocket, so that if I sit down, I lose track of it less.
Lesson learned.
Yeah,
There's
because
a good one.
back in the day, I would do the same thing, where like when we were touring, I would have my in-ear pack and I would put it on my belt, and occasionally I would be like hours after we've packed everything up, and I realize the pack is still on my belt.
Yeah.
And then so that's when I started putting it in my back pocket, because then
Okay. Thank you.
I'll realize that
Normally
it's
I
back
do
there.
put it in the back, and for some reason I put it on the side this time.
Yeah.
Just for easier access, it's right there. So
And you know what? I mean, it's also one of those mistakes you'll never make again.
Yeah.
So if it's more comfortable there, that's great. I just started doing that 20 years ago because I realized I would be like, now we're in the hotel and it's packed up and it's possibly freezing cold outside. That's a real theme. Or whatever it is. And like, I don't want to go like open up the trailer and put my pack where it actually goes, and then et cetera, et cetera. But you said you actually did not have to prep that much, and you said
No.
the show went great.
Yeah.
Music went great.
Yeah. The service went great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you know those songs?
No.
Well, they were all new.
One of them was I had learned for the week before,
Okay.
but the other three were new, and I learned them. I think I charted them 2 days before, so I had 2 practice sessions on this one. One where I was in the studio and I just listened to the songs and I translated the way that they do their charts into a 1-pager that I use,
Right.
because they have these like 4-page charts.
Yeah.
So I had one session where I just went through and made my own charts based on theirs. I wasn't playing at all. And then one session where I played through those charts to make sure they were correct.
Yeah.
And that's all the practice I did this time. It's a lot less than I've done in the past, but honestly, these songs are not hard. And they've never been hard, but I've been wanting to over prepare, and I've also been wanting to use the church services, the church gigs, as an opportunity to bring new skills onto stage, like playing with a pick, or doing more sliding on one string, or a new riff, So I've been practicing extra, not because the songs need it, but because I'm trying to bring
Right.
new skills and easy songs in a low risk environment. That's a great time to do that.
Yeah.
But this time I was just like, I'm just gonna play this it's a gig,
And we keep saying
service.
Yeah.
I'm gonna play this service, and I'm just here to play the songs and go home. And so I needed very little practice for
Yeah.
that, which is good to see.
Yeah, it's just great though that you are kind of. I mean, it's worth talking about that. there's a period of learning to do anything that like you need some time to bring it onto the stage. There's practicing at
Yeah.
home and everything works great and you can have it down, but you really do need a few swings
Yeah.
at a new, even tiny little micro things. It's like, no, you do need to like do it in that live environment where
Yeah.
your head's up and you're paying attention to other people and you're paying attention to what's going on around you and then working in a new little thing. And it can be
Yeah.
tiny, but
Here's an example of a tiny thing that I do need to work on. So one of the things I've been adding in as a tiny little new skill is sliding up an octave. So like I'm like playing a C and then I go C D D D and then I want to come back. You know,
Right.
just a little emphasis. But the amount of brain power that I use finding the new C on that same string is just enough to make me not ready for whatever note is after that.
right.
So it's an easy skill. Like I could practice
get
going
it.
from
Yeah,
octave
yeah.
to octave all day long.
Yeah.
That's no problem. It's like remembering to think ahead for like getting back to where you were and playing the right note. That's the skill.
And that's great because I would rate that similar to the where the drummer hits the snare and the floor tom and goes like as being one of the best drum fills of all time, like one of the most effective drum fills of all time.
Yeah.
Just that slide up the octave and do 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 do
Yeah.
do. It's like one of the best bass fills of all time. It's like one of the most effective.
Yeah.
And it's so simple, but like it's great to really have that in your pocket because it's one of those that always works, will never not work
Right.
in any situation. If you need to make a little transition,
Yeah.
do do do, you know, and like, you know, whereas like some scale runs or something, you might accidentally step on a note that's
Right.
wrong, but that one's
Right.
and similar to that drum fill, just
Yeah.
it's never not going to work.
Best drum fill.
Yeah. So as for me, I've mainly been working on producing and mixing, and the book, of course, working on that pretty hard. Few roadblocks. Going to get a little help from Kristen Parsons. Talk some of this stuff out because sometimes I am so used to saying it and so used to coaching people and stuff, but then when it comes to writing it down. It is somehow I'm just running into because when you're talking and you're going back and forth and you're sort of exchanging, it's like easier if I have like an object of someone I'm trying to communicate something to,
Yeah.
and I might say it a little differently or apply it to their exact use case. But when it's sort of a blank slate of anyone who might pick this up, and I'm just running into a few places where I'm like I'm having trouble explaining this, even though I explain this over and over again for a living. Which, you know, I've done, and I taped, Lena and I went through her show, and I made notes after we got home from the show, and then she came in and we just like talked through all of the things I saw with her show, and I recorded me talking, so I'm going back
Oh, nice.
and transcribing some of the stuff I was talking about.
You could upload it to the recording to ChatGPT, and I'm sure it would spit you back a transcription.
Oh, that's genius. Yeah, I need to do more of that.
Dude, it is insane.
It's getting really
Yeah.
good. The class I'm teaching Wednesday, which is about artists' stories, like what's your story as an artist and how to develop your story and how to understand your story. Because to like tell something, you have to understand it first. And I did use Chat GPT for help in just basically coming up with the outline of what I was going to say. Like I had all the parts and I was like, this is just very disorganized. I was like, let me type a few prompts into Chat GPT. There are other ones out there, but the AI thing, and it came back after a couple of tries, it came back with like, oh, that is a really good outline. I'm going to take some of their random stuff they scraped off different websites out and put my stuff in. But I was like, that's a better outline, and rather than me banging my head against it for 30 minutes, I could do that in 3 minutes. And I just think there is some future for that kind of stuff,
Absolutely.
you know?
Yeah.
Anyway, let's close it down. We have no sponsors this week. Some of Adrian's comments been alienating a lot of people. And we've lost all our sponsors. Yeah, it's pretty sad.
I can be pretty edgy.
You are extremely edgy. Some of those opinions. So we've lost all our advertisers. We're going to try to get some back. However, we are sponsored, as always, by Performance High,
Voice and Music Studio.
and we will see you next week.